Ninjago has had a lot of different misconceptions over the course of the years, and a lot of them are still widely debated to this very day. And all of these misconceptions have a vast array of different origin points, whether they come from different streaming services and how they actually present Ninjago, whether it comes from in-show dialogue that's left ambiguous at best, or if it just comes from offhanded comments from the writers. You never know where these things come from, but once it has that motion, there's just not really any getting rid of it whatsoever. But I think one of the most infamous misconceptions by this point in time is just simply put, what actually are the season numbers, especially later on down the line? Because at some point along Ninjago's history, it most certainly did get messy, to the point where there are people who just don't have the correct season numbers. So what I'm doing today is addressing this main misconception point, talking about what is, what isn't a Ninjago season, and actually tying numbers definitively to where they actually are meant to be. So let me not waste any more of your time, and let's talk about Ninjago's biggest misconception. Now, I was just going to skip immediately onto the main point of contention, which is the 11-minute era, but I want to pull some mythical bull knowledge to see if anyone actually remembers this. There was actually an initial misconception about Ninjago's seasoning in the very first instance of the classic era. Ninjago actually had a debate that I personally even fell for back in the day. And that was actually what was classified as the first and the second season of Ninjago. I'm hoping people remembered this, but back when the seasons were first airing, people didn't actually know what classified as season 1 and season 2. There were people who believed the pilot episodes to be the first season, and they were dubbed season 1 for a fair bit of time. Of course, nowadays we know that's not the case and they're simply the pilots, or if you wanted to attach a number to it, I personally like to call them season 0, but that was actually considered season 1 back then, which meant season 1 or Rise of the Snakes was actually considered season 2 to some people. This was extremely confusing to a lot of people and definitely did have a lot of people scratching their heads, which by proxy made what is season 2 or Legacy of the Green Ninja season 3 to a lot of people back then. This was extremely confusing and wasn't actually cleared up until later down the line, but there were people at the time who thought that that was the naming convention, but there was actually one more variant of this beyond that one, which was the other misconception being that everything that we saw before Rebooted was just season 1. The pilots weren't considered in this because of the title cards, but the title cards is where this actually did come from. Instead of saying season 2 episode 1 Darkness Shall Rise, it was just called episode 14 Darkness Shall Rise, and people took that as just the continuation of season 1, meaning there were a load of people on sites like YouTube and on Twitter who were just dubbing it all season 1. There were many videos uploaded just referring to it as season 1 episode 26 or 25 or 24, so on and so forth. People believed it was all just one continuous season and Rebooted was going to be season 2. Again, it was later corrected and rectified, but there were a lot of people that did believe it was just one big continuous streak. This also most likely stemmed from the fact that at this time, 26 episode seasons were extremely common, so it just made sense in a lot of people's minds. But like I said, it was corrected and people just simply moved on, and for the longest time, it actually was fairly fine. No one considered any of the seasons in any sort of contention. Day of the Departed got away with it, we went into season 7, and even the Oni trilogy just believing that we had everything sorted out. But then we got into the 11-minute era, which was just the beginning of mass confusion on all scale. The Fire and Ice chapter luckily got away with it and it was all classified properly as season 11, but then we actually got into the separate convention of calling it season 1. Because it was technically a new show, people were giving it a standard reset, and it seemed to be with that reset, confusion did also happen to set in. After the Fire and Ice chapter had concluded, LEGO ordered the new episodes of Master of the Mountain and Prime Empire to be produced, but because they paid and decided to get them all sorted along the same production cycle, they were actually classified as the same season in the eyes of a lot of different vendors, and to this very day it is still considered as much, and it has gotten to the point where there's a misconception that they are also now the same season, being season 2. This isn't a misconception on the end of people who consider it season 12 and 13, but when you look at the Wild Brain era, and if you're a new Ninjago fan looking in, it gives you this idea that they are linked together. For example, on Netflix, they are still classified as season 2 or the exact same batch of episodes together. It is extremely confusing, and a lot of people could be mistaken by it if they just didn't know. This also does have an unintentional knock-on effect which a lot of people still don't acknowledge to this day, and I believe even the LEGO YouTube channel are guilty of this. Because of the misconception of both of those seasons being season 2 together, a lot of people don't realize that Wild Brain technically has 5 seasons, but on a lot of different pages, a lot of different streaming sites, to this very day you still see Seabound classified as season 3 and Crystallized classified as season 4, when in reality they're actually season 4 and season 5. It makes no sense, and it seems to be that no one has actually caught on to it, so again, people have this misconception that there's actually less seasons than there truly are. But with that out of the way, it gets even worse, because it leads on to the biggest season misconception to this very day, which is just quite simply, is the island season 14? And a lot of people do thoroughly believe this. This is still something that a lot of people still technically consider to this very day. There have been a lot of amendments to it. There are a lot of streaming services as well that just classify it as Seabound. But the thing is that there's a lot of people that do number it as 14. Which is just simply not true. It is classified as a special. It has never been classified beyond the course of it. It's never been branded as a season, and that is quite simply it. But people do classify it as season 14, which is strange, making Seabound season 15 and Crystallized season 16, which just doesn't sound right. Of course, the reality is that the island is just considered the island. It is the third convention that we actually got within Ninjago. We got the pilot, Day of the Departed, and the island. It's under that bracket of special type Ninjago episodes. It is not a numbered season at all, which makes Seabound season 14 and Crystallized season 15. That's just how it works. That's how it is. It has never been presented in any sort of form of a season. It is just meant to serve as a bridge to set up Wojira, and also to set up where the amulets are and who the Stormkeepers are. It is just quite simply to give Seabound more time than it actually needed when it did come to its season. It is honestly really cool, and I actually personally really like the island, but I just can't understand why people refer to it as a season. But that is by far one of the most biggest Ninjago misconceptions we have ever seen. The thing is that once you go into Dragon's Rising, things actually become fairly clear. At the very beginning stages of Dragon's Rising, people were classifying it as Season 16, but of course we now later know that it's just quite simply not. The convention is quite steady in seasons and parts respectively. There doesn't seem to be any debate on that. So it's nice that we finally got past this point in time, but it's very much a good idea to clear up these earlier seasons just to make things feel more coherent. But the thing is that as I've shown, with certain seasons still being branded as incorrect seasons by LEGO themselves, I feel like we're nowhere near out of the woodwork in terms of correcting the convention of what is and what isn't a Ninjago season and what their number is. Which is a massive shame because it just comes off as confusing, but luckily it does seem to be that this convention is actually going away, and people do have a better idea on what we do and don't have when it does come to the show. But this does make me wonder, and this is where I'm going to pass it off to you guys. Have you fallen for these misconceptions before? There is nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I just think it's very interesting to know how this type of information can spread. Did you consider Season 2 Season 1? Did you consider the island its own season? Did you consider Dragon's Rising to be Season 16? I would love to know what you think when it comes to these season conventions, because I do find it fairly curious to know how far spread this was. So I would love to know if you ever did believe these, and if so, how did you discover it may not be the case? And also let me know if you do want me to cover some other misconceptions we have seen in the Ninjago time. I would love to know if this is something you'd like to see me cover, because I do think they're fairly fun and isolated little stories from those time periods when it does come to the show. I just think they're very funny to look back on with this modern knowledge in mind. But obviously, if you guys want more of it, I'm more than happy to do so as well. But thank you very much for watching the video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people, and if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always become a channel member and join the legends that you see on screen. Each of you, your support means the absolute world to me, and I truly cannot thank you enough. But like I said, that's about it for today, and take care. Okay, bye!